Welcome back to my channel and the second part of making my dungarees with my own pattern. I shall take you straight down to the sewing part so that you can see where I'm up to and what to do next. Okay, I've already sewn the edges of the interfacing, the lining of the top. Sewn them on both edges. And done a little hem around the bottom so it's just not a raw edge there. I've pinned the outside of the dungarees and the dungarees themselves. I've never used basting stitch. I don't even know if people use basting stitch. They don't even know if they know what it is these days. I was taught basting stitch when I was at school learning to sew, and it's a process by which you pin it and then you do a really long running stitch just to hold it in place, and then you sew proper, and then you take the basting stitch out. I've never seen the point of it. I've never used it in my own homemaking, and I don't suppose anybody else does either. So I just stitch straight away. And seeing as we've said right from the beginning, we know how rough and ready this is going to be, it really doesn't warrant having basting stitch. So I will sew these. Won't bore you, you know what a sewing machine looks like and you know what sewing looks like. I will sew these up and then I will show you the next stage, which is putting the lining the right way round inside the dungarees. Okay, so I have sewn up the sides and I've also sewn up the insides of the legs. I went round the crutch, back and back again 3 times just to give it extra strength, because obviously the crutch area gets a lot of wear and tear, unfortunately. The good news is I've just tried these on and I don't need to lose too much weight on my 5-2 diet. Nonetheless, I will continue with it because it will do me good to lose a bit of weight. The bad news was, well, not so much bad news, but they were quite long. So I have chopped the bottoms off, as you do. Just take a pair of scissors to it and chop the bottoms off. And obviously when I hem these ones like that, then they'll be just the right length. I'm fortunate because my material doesn't have a right and a wrong side, nor does it have a nap. And for those of you who don't know what a nap is, velvet, for instance, has a nap. When you brush it one way, it lies a shiny side, and then you brush it the other way and it's dull side. Not all naps have a shiny and a dull side, but they will have a different look to them depending on which way up they are. So for those of you who use material with a nap and a right and a wrong side, you have to be quite careful about when you put pieces together and when you do the next bit, which is putting the lining for the tabs, what will become inside the dungarees. Now I know this looks again back to front, so in order to show you how it's going to work once the pieces are hemmed together, I'm just going to pin quite roughly, but just to show you, the main dungarees are inside out, so here is the hem, the seam, raw edge showing. The interfacing stroke lining that we've created is right way out, so the seams are on the inside, but then seam that will be showing on the dungarees that will actually be seen, and the right side of the lining seam are put together. And we're just going to pin, that's the royal we, I, just going to pin roughly round. Obviously when I come to sew it, I'm going to make sure it's a lot less rough. I'm just doing it quickly now to show you. Going around one front tab bit. That needs some alteration there, so this is a good time to do it, and luckily with a rough and ready pattern like mine you can. So you start off doing it that way, and then you join the right side of the hem again on the lining to the right side of the hem on the dungarees on the other side. Now if I was a proper sewist, I wasn't so bone idle and slapdash, I would press all the seams open. And if I was making a proper thing, like one time I made it was actually a historic dress that I again adapted the pattern from a wedding dress. When I'm making something like that, I make it more how it should be made, make it properly. I'm more careful with the pinning, I'm more careful with the cutting, I'm more careful with the sewing. Anyway, rather than you watch me doing all this, I shall come back to you when I've pinned it all the way round. Now I'm doing the back pieces. It's going to take quite some time, so I'll come back to you. So now I've pinned it all the way round. As you can see, on both sides I've still got the cottons showing through for where the slit is going to go for the tabs to go through. I've pinned it all the way round. I haven't pinned the end of the tabs for two reasons. One, because there was no need really just for this demonstration, and two, because it's going to be easier for me to show you when I turn the tabs inside out. When you come to sew the seams, if ever there's a long piece of material like a tube or a waistband for an apron or something like that, it's really difficult to turn it inside out. What I learned to do it with, something as wide as this, I can do it with the handle of a wooden spoon. If it's thinner, you can do it with like a chopstick or some similar thing, just sort of ease it through, poke it through. Right, so we're going to now, remember, I've got on the inside, because I've got the inside of the dungarees showing, on the inside of the dungarees I've got the inside seam of the lining. So when I turn it, the lining, bring it out the other way round, trying not to stab myself with the pins, this is what should happen. Obviously, because I've only pinned it and it's not sewn, it's going to be all puckered. Well, of course, now it's catching on the end. actually harder with pins in because they keep catching on themselves. And the other tab, and I keep pricking myself. I don't know whether I'll be able to get the other tab through because it's caught on one of the pins. So you get the idea. And then the front piece, push the tab pieces up. Right, so that's what it's like when the dungarees are inside out. When the dungarees are then put the right way in, so now the dungaree seams are on the inside where they should be, and the lining, which will be obviously stitched properly, not just pinned, is on the inside where it should be, and there will be no raw edges. Okay? So that is how it will be, but stitched. So that's my next job that I'm going to do. That's my dog you can hear in the background, whining, because he wants his dinner. What's the matter, Albert? Do you want your dinner? Uh-oh, he's coming to investigate. I better put all my sewing to one side. Frida, leave. Albert, come. Here he is. Albert, say hello. There he is. Albert, say hello. Oh, and that's Frida. She's come to visit. Okay, so it's another day. I finished the sewing. I was going to show you the sewing of when I was doing the holes for the tabs to go through, and I was going to do big buttonholes using a buttonhole foot on my sewing machine. It's just as well I didn't film it really because the air was blue. The sewing machine is fairly new, very up to date. It's got all mod cons on it, and because of that they kind of have a mind of their own. With my old sewing machine, which wasn't that old but it was not as all mod cons as this one, you could do the buttonhole, stop it halfway through, twist the material. You could do it by hand. This one has got it programmed that it does the whole buttonhole for you in one go, using a button in the buttonhole foot to guide the length of the stitches. But the guide for the length is a little plastic button that comes down, and the actual foot that the button goes in and that guides the stitches is also plastic. So when one is sewing, it decides that it's not going to slide properly along and give you the right size of buttonhole according to the button that you've put in, because it can't cope with it because it's only made of plastic. And the tab that sits down as a blocker is also plastic, and it moves. It's just a waste of time. So after starting 2 buttonholes and the cotton breaking, I had to unpick it all because obviously the buttonhole maker wants to do the whole buttonhole from scratch. You can't go in halfway through and trick it. So I unpicked it twice, which took a long time, and obviously started to damage the material. And then eventually, when I did do the buttonhole as a whole piece, as I say, the guide didn't stop it from stitching, so it carried on going and going and going and going. So in the end, I took the buttonhole foot off, put the ordinary foot on, used a zigzag stitch, and where it had done a long length, I just made my own mark from there. I had to do it the old-fashioned way, if you like. So needless to say, I wasn't very happy. It had wasted ever such a lot of time, and I was swearing quite a lot, quite badly, nonetheless. I'd done all the seams. I sewed the interface into the main dungarees. I then sewed all the way round on the outside. Can you see there's an extra lining there, just to hold the lining down so it wasn't flapping about. And as you see, I've done some big L's, and I've had to do them because I had the original machine do a great long stitch, and I'm like, stop. I thought, well, I'm not going to unpick it all again, I'll just go with it, and actually it works quite well. So I did all the stitching all the way around there in one long piece, all the way up the tabs, all the way along the back, all the way up the other tab. So it's all one long stitching, just like I did when I put the actual interface into the dungarees. I've also taken up the hem. I tried them on. They fitted, even though I'd actually taken the seams in a little bit. So what one does is when you put them on, I'm actually going to do it the other way around. So instead of putting it through from the back, I shall put it through from the front tab. When it's in the right place over my shoulder, I shall come back round, tie it through, and that will be it, done up. So, I'm sorry I couldn't show you the sewing of it all, but partly you know what a sewing machine does and you know what it looks like to see somebody sewing, and partly, as I say, there was a lot of swearing going on. Now I'm going to turn them in the right way. I'm not going to model them for you. Sorry. In fact, I'm not sorry. And you wouldn't be sorry either if you saw me in them, because I look like a big clown. Somebody saw the material and they said it looks like Cadbury purple. I'm going to call these my Cadbury dungarees, because as I said at the beginning, I've got another 2 pairs to make. The other 2 pairs are a blue and a bright yellow, one of which I will probably be embroidering, and both of which I think I will do the internal leg part, only about 3/4 of the, well, no, not even 3/4, only about 9 inches up. The inside of it will be lined, a bit like I did with the top, but it will be lined with the same colour that I'm doing with at the top. So it will be, say, blue with a yellow lining, or yellow with a purple lining, or whichever I choose. As you've probably learned from the rest of these videos, I change my mind a lot. So that when I turn it up to make them 3/4 length, if I want to, then the bit that's showing will be a different colour. And because it will be lined, it will stay up better. It will give it extra thickness to the material, so it will stay up better. And also, obviously, these ones I won't be able to turn up so much because they've got raw edges on the seams where I just whizzed up. The other ones will have these seams covered because they will have the lining, just like these have got the seams covered because they've got the lining at the top of this. So instead of it looking like that, it looks like that. So I hope this has been useful for you. Perhaps when I've got round to finishing the other 2 pairs of dungarees, and maybe when I have decorated 1 pair, I might show you those as well, depending on what's going on in my life. My next project is my daughter is coming over this weekend, and we're making a new headboard out of old things. We'll explain more on a new video. Hope you can join me. Thanks for watching.